My name is Jennifer Sherwood. When I was younger, my dad actually had an aneurysm, and that was really scary. So I've always been interested in the brain. Many of you may already know that the MRI is the preferred method for scanning and imaging the brain. Oftentimes, a contrast agent is necessary in order to get an accurate diagnosis. Unfortunately, the commercially available contrast agent is gadolinium. Gadolinium is a toxic heavy metal. I'm working on iron oxide nanoparticles for a safer MRI contrast agents. And by controlling the shape of these particles, we may be able to enhance the contrast for a better image.
These are people who are doing amazing work that truly they're going to be on the forefront of their field.
Members of particular minority groups experience a greater likelihood of being diagnosed with certain disabilities, often the result of not understanding cultural differences and nuances.
My name is Jessica Pincham King. My thesis is on parent involvement in special education. A lot of times you find that parents are interested in being involved in their child's education, but given life circumstances, family context, and maybe even the community environment, they experience a number of limitations. My parents they're the civil rights generation, so they always taught me the importance of social justices and combating injustices. It was just kind of naturally embedded into our household. So even though I may be identifying or my research may illustrate some negative aspects, I like to kind of take those and in turn say, okay, this is what we see. How can we improve this?
It's a skill building thing, but the other thing that it does, of course, is showcases the great research that our graduate students are doing that has economic benefit to the state.
10 to 20% of the initial fabric bought for a design is wasted in cutting process. Did you know that 50% of the cost of producing garments comes from fabric?
My name is Ilahi, and my last name is Saidi. I'm originally from Iran. My thesis is designing garments without any waste, zero waste. Using software, we can see that how many percent of the fabric is wasted. And then kind of we can manipulate it in different ways to use the fabric more efficiently.
The textile industry has a huge environmental and ethical impact.
And I believe that fabric is precious, so we don't have to waste fabric.
We have one of the largest, if not the largest, 3-minute thesis competition.
It's intense. It's not unlike an athletic competition or anything that you have on television where there's eliminations and you get down to the final. The drama is all there.
This is one of the things that we truly enjoy. Every part of this is fun.
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Dave Franco, Associate Provost and Dean of the Graduate School. It's my great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to a really terrific event here in the Capstone, and that is the second annual 3-minute thesis competition finals here at the university. The 15 graduate students who you're going to be hearing from tonight were gleaned from approximately 200 students who started out in competitions at the departmental level. What is a 3-minute thesis anyway? For those of you that don't know, it started out as a competition at the University of Queensland in Australia in 2008, and then in succeeding years spread to other countries in Europe, Hong Kong, Canada, and now in the United States in the last 2 years.
Well, the essence of it is to allow a student to boil down all of their work into a real short presentation that they could give to anybody. It wouldn't have to be a specialist audience. An elevator speech.
If they talk one word over 3 minutes, they are disqualified. They can have one static PowerPoint slide. It can't have any special animations. It just has to be straight to the point.
And we have scholarship awards and research and travel grant awards for all of our campus winners.
And audience, you are not passive observers here. We have some work for you. In following international 3MT competition rules, although the judges will pick our first through fourth place winners, your votes alone will determine the People's Choice Award winner. So now I'd like to introduce our judges panel, who will rank our 15 finalists on the basis of communication, comprehension, and engagement, and they will determine our first through fourth place winners. Judge John H. England Jr., Circuit Judge for the 6th Judicial Circuit in Alabama, and member of the UA System Board of Trustees. Dr. Kathy Randall, Chair of the Alabama Academy of Honor and of Pettis Randall Holdings, LLC. Dr. Joe Benson, UA Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs and Professor of Geological Sciences. Dr. Carl Pinkert, UA VP for Research and Economic Development and Professor of Biological Sciences. Dr. Samori Pruitt, Vice President for Community Affairs. Dr. Kim Sievert, Associate Professor of Human Nutrition and Hospitality Management and Faculty Senate Liaison to the Research Advisory Committee. Mr. Will Guin, PhD candidate in Civil Construction and Environmental Engineering, and last year's first place winner and People's Choice Award winner at the competition in San Antonio. Could all of you please stand and recognize or receive our recognition? Thank you. So now, without further ado, I want to turn things over to Dr. Goodliff and start our competition. And finalists, the very best of luck to each and every one of you.
Our first speaker is Mohammed Al-Zarad. Mohammed is from the Department of Civil, Construction, and Environmental Engineering. The title of Mohammed's talk tonight is A Framework to Apply Hedging to Mitigate the Risk of Construction Materials Price Escalation.
Inaccurate estimation of material cost is #1 reason for a project to run over budget.
So that's the idea of my thesis, to find a way, to introduce a new way to fix the price of construction material up front. I am originally from Syria. I moved to the United States about 5 years ago. Hedging is a financial term. Usually we heard about it a lot in Wall Street. This is the first time somebody brought this term to the construction industry. Engineering is an applied science, it's not only theory. This is the beautiful thing about engineering.
I propose the idea of using hedging to mitigate.
My name is Levi Presnell. I applied to the master's program in communication studies. Thought it would be a really good degree to get the doctorate as well.
At the heart of this controversy is an important question. Why is gaming culture so hostile to difference?
Video games are made for and played by young white males, and that reflects in their attitudes. I wanted to explore and just kind of to systemize maybe some of the things that I was seeing and provide vocabulary for people to talk about it, because we need to have these discussions.
Well, this accusation was proven false, but as others...
My name is Jennifer Sherwood. I am originally from Sierra Vista, Arizona. I've always been interested in science, but when I was younger, my dad actually had an aneurysm. A lot of things went right for him to have lived and not had any problems. I think it definitely inspired me to stay in the biological, biomedical area. So being able to work on developing a safer contrast agent that can help in the fast diagnosis of any sort of brain problem is great for me, because a lot of times when you do have an issue with the brain, a fast, accurate diagnosis is essential. The hardest thing for me was having to complete my degree while working almost full-time at a restaurant as a server. I just enjoy problem solving, so nothing that you do is going to be perfect the first time you do it. You just have to stick with it and keep trying different things, and eventually you're going to get what you want if you work hard enough. And I think that's what's pleasurable for me, is that it doesn't come right away. It takes a lot of work. And when you finally get it, you get a really good feeling of yourself, that you solved something that other people maybe couldn't solve.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Sherwood. Jennifer is from the Department of Chemical and Biological Engineering.
Okay, so one word. How are you feeling right now?
Nervous.
The title of her talk is Iron Oxide Nanoparticles, the Safer MRI Contrast Agent. Thank you, Jennifer.
Everyone hates going to the doctor. There's always a lot of poking and prodding and tests involved. Fortunately, the doctors have a number of tools available to make this process as painless as possible. One of these tools is magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. Many of you may already know that the MRI is the preferred method for scanning and imaging the brain. The MRI can also be used for more routine diagnosis. If you have ever injured your knee playing sports, you may have gone to the doctor to get an MRI to make sure that you didn't have any lesions or tears. If you have gotten an MRI before, you may remember you had to get an injection first. This injection is a contrast agent used to generate a detailed image. Oftentimes, a contrast agent is necessary in order to get an accurate diagnosis. This is easy to tell when you examine the two images of the same brain on my slide. As you can tell, the brain tumor is only apparent in the image of the brain with the contrast agent. Unfortunately, the commercially available contrast agent is gadolinium. Gadolinium is a toxic heavy metal, like mercury or lead. I don't know about you, but I would not want to inject that into my body. Therefore, a new contrast agent is necessary to provide a safer alternative for patients. Iron oxide nanoparticles have been shown to have similar properties to gadolinium. In fact, iron oxide nanoparticles have already been approved for the use in the treatment of iron deficiency disorder. For my thesis, I will be working on developing nanoparticles of different shapes to determine which shape gives the best contrast. I will also be working on targeting the nanoparticles, because if we're able to target and deliver the particles directly to the tumor sites, we may be able to generate a better image. While there is some research still necessary to get iron oxide nanoparticles to have as good as contrast as the commercially available contrast agents, we are on the verge of creating a safer alternative. So next time you or someone you know goes to the doctor to get an MRI, ask your doctor what type of contrast agent they are using. Very soon, the answer will be iron oxide nanoparticles. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
It's over.
Yep.
Are you relaxed now?
Yeah, a little bit.
How are you feeling?
I'm glad it's over. I'm relieved.
How do you think it went?
I think I did well. I didn't forget anything.
Our next speaker.
My name is Lauren Crane. I'm from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My undergraduate degree was in geography, and my master's degree is in geography as well.
My research objective was to generate economic benefits from expanding state park tourism.
Outdoor recreation in Alabama is an undertapped natural resource giant that can be used to develop the state economically. As an undergrad, I focused more on the human side of geography. I'd really love to work for a nonprofit organization environmentally related.
So this is one of 3 viral campaigns I've built with this methodology.
I'm Brandon Chikotsky. I'm a Texas baby, but I got to Alabama as soon as I could.
In the room, everyone just had the same points over and over and over. And usually
when I was a kiddo, I tried to be on TV at every opportunity I could find. I remember painting my body at a basketball game and getting put on ESPN. I thought, wow, this is going to work. If we can build fame, if we know the constructive principles by which one can amplify their brand, anyone, no matter what profession they're in, can raise their brand value. That means they can earn more money. They can have more fun in their life by having more social capital. Essentially, the science of fame is like a way to empower people, which is exactly what I want to do. I was able to build a simulation called baldlogo.com. Now, baldlogo.com was a fictitious business that sold ad space on bald people's heads, but because it got so big, it became real.
And now it's time for you to earn extra income on your bald head.
And I actually had to incorporate and get a lawyer involved and hire a COO, and we ended up donating a bunch of money to kids with alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune disease that causes baldness. I was on the Steve Harvey Show, the Ellen DeGeneres Show, Ripley's Believe It or Not, the New York Daily News. At one point, the Los Angeles Times ran a story. Fox News had me on in LA. I mean, fame is so pervasive and almost omniscient that you can't ignore it. Everyone knows a celebrity. Now, what better knowledge of celebrity could you have than to be one? Or to know that you could be one, and to know what it would take? I want to give people that. I look at academia as not only a life path where I can inspire students and be an excellent professor. That's what I aspire to be. But I also have an ambition to contribute to research significantly. The University of Alabama is a perfect place for this. I'm teaching now, and I'm also heavily engaged in research. Now is the time. Everyone has an opportunity if you just know what methodology to apply. And that methodology is what I'm developing, and those tools, I hope, will become so prescriptive that everyone will have an opportunity.
Our next speaker is Brandon Chukotsky.
Well, I'm excited, so I take all the nervous energy I have and I just transfer it into excitement.
What's the difference between excited and nervous?
They're similar feelings. The only problem I have is overzealousness. I gotta make sure I don't run on the front row and high-five everybody.
Brandon is from Communication and Information Sciences.
What is your main goal in this presentation? If you could focus on one thing.
I just want to look beautiful.
The title of Brandon's talk is How to Build Fame. Thank you, Brandon.
In 1968, cultural icon Andy Warhol stated, "In the future, everyone will have their 15 minutes of fame." Well, growing up with the internet, it seemed like there was a new famous person every month. And currently, it seems like there's a new famous person every day, if not more frequently. And that leads me to ask, how does one build fame? Well, in the 1980s, Dr. Kevin Keller from Dartmouth established brand equity theory. This suggests that we all have a brand, and this brand has value, and this value can rise with widespread exposure. So I sought to build a simulation where I would go viral and gain widespread exposure, and I would do it in three main media categories: broadcast news, print media, and the internet. I then collected over 200 cases where people had gone viral in at least one of these categories. And what I found is that the reasons and processes by which they gained their widespread exposure seemed random, until I narrowed my focus onto one demographic, a demographic I could more readily understand, one just like me: balding men. I now had all the components I needed for a successful simulation, which I titled BaldLogo.com, a fictitious business where I sold ad space on bald people's heads. And when I launched, this is what happened. BaldLogo.com went viral. I was featured in over 35 countries and over 10 languages in broadcast news and print media. Online, I garnered over 1.1 million views on my YouTube channel. I was featured on The Ellen DeGeneres Show, The Steve Harvey Show, Ripley's Believe It or Not, and given a pilot segment on Larry King's new network called Aura TV. This is one of the crowds that followed me around in Times Square after one of my filming segments. My brand value rose with widespread exposure, meaning the predictions provided by brand equity theory that I mentioned earlier were supported in my case. And this bodes well for everyone in the room, no matter what field or profession you're in, because as the science of fame advances, so too do your opportunities to raise your brand value. And that leads me to reconsider Andy Warhol's seminal statement. Perhaps in the future, not everyone will have their 15 minutes of fame. Instead, we'll have the tools at our disposal to build fame if we so choose.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. Well, I feel great. I actually want more. I want to go back out there and just hang out. I love the attention. I love the crowd.
All right, what do you want to talk about?
I don't know.
What's the worst thing you've ever done?
I'm Ryan Feiner. I'm from upstate New York originally, and I came down here to study geology. And I study pretty much petroleum industry, so that means looking for oil. The goal of my project is to reduce the amount of oil wells we drill and make the ones we do drill in the future more productive. I studied the marine shale, Mississippi and Louisiana. I'm looking for oil beneath the surface of the earth. And yeah, I use statistics to do it. Your profession changes who you are. You know, you can talk to an 80-year-old geologist, most experienced in the world, just the nicest guy. He'll sit down and talk to you, even if you don't know anything. These tools measure everything from... I get to pick who I want to be. I want to be a jerk. I got into geology because I thought geologists were cool.
My name is Rachel Thibodeau, and I am originally from Dallas, Texas. I am a second-year graduate student in the Department of Psychology, and my area of study is children's cognitive development. I've always been interested in trying to help people, but I knew that medicine wasn't really the route for me, so I was lucky enough to get an internship experience in high school that exposed me to educational interventions, and I found that this is a way that I can really help children and help people. And so that's what really got me interested in this field. In my area of research, we're really trying to get back to the basics of teaching students how to think critically and how to have those higher order thinking skills that will allow them to succeed later on in life. And those skills are really important when just knowing the facts isn't going to help you succeed anymore. So I'm really interested in improving children's school readiness, and we're finding that we can do that very early on, as early as preschool. So we've seen a lot of research that shows cognitive benefits of engaging in pretend play, but all of these studies have been correlational, so we don't know the directionality of this relationship, and we don't know what's causing what. So that's what I'm really interested in. Does imaginative play cause boost in executive functions, cognitive development, learning potential? So that's what I'm studying with my thesis, and we're finding that it does. So engaging in pretend play helps children focus better, it helps with their self-control, and we're still in the preliminary stages of data collection, but we're already finding these benefits to pretend play. I'm can be pretty goofy and silly sometimes, so I think that really helps in my research, being able to just let go and be with the kids and kind of follow their lead with this play research. So we let them come up with all the imaginative themes that they want to participate in. So just being really flexible and kind of playing along with them, and sometimes having to get into a silly character just to keep them going with the research. So that's really helped me in my area. So it's right over there. Okay, let's all go inside. Can we get inside? Yes. Okay, how do we get inside? This research has really wide-ranging impacts because it's something that's easily implemented in classrooms at no cost. So this is something that teachers can take in just a few minutes each day in their classroom, can encourage children to participate in this highly imaginative play, and hopefully see these benefits in their children. And this is something, we're just testing it in a population right now that's middle class children. So I think in an at-risk sample, we're going to see even greater benefits. So hopefully through these educational interventions, we'll see fewer behavioral issues in children, fewer social emotional issues. So I think it can really have wide-ranging impacts on all children throughout America.
Our next speaker is Rachel Thibodeau. Rachel is from the Department of Psychology.
I had a kind of a sense of calm back there, but now that I'm out here, it's like everybody's doing so good, so I'm like, I need to keep up that standard, so yeah.
The title of her talk is Improving School Readiness Through Imaginative Play. Thank you, Rachel.
Everything I need to know, I learned in kindergarten. Many important lifelong skills that adults use on a daily basis, such as how to pay attention, how to get along with others, and how to focus on a goal, are taught early on in school. Underlying these skills are basic cognitive processes called executive functions that help our mind control our body. Unfortunately, these executive functions are greatly impaired by everyday stressors. Many children growing up in America, like the children you see in this picture here, live in poverty, which is inherently stressful. Research has shown that stressful environments impair brain development and along with it executive functions, preventing these children from developing the skills they need to learn in kindergarten for lifelong success. My research focuses on a solution to this. We need to find a way to enrich these children's environments in a way that is inexpensive, easily implemented, and fun. And here's how I propose to do that. Pretend play creates an enriched environment for brain development. If you've ever observed children engaging in pretend play, you've probably noticed that this type of play is quite cognitively sophisticated. My thesis focuses on an intervention that encourages children to participate in highly imaginative play every day for several weeks. Afterwards, we measure their executive functions to see if we have stimulated brain development. And look what we found. After the intervention, the errors children make in shifting their attention and the problems they have controlling their behavior decrease significantly. This means executive functions were improved simply through enriched play. In other words, we improve these students' self-control and focus. So why does this matter? As my research shows, pretend play is a no-cost, effective way to bolster executive functions and brain development. This is especially important for children who are at risk for a lifetime of serious issues, such as dropping out of school and antisocial behavior. My research suggests that engaging in brain-enriching pretend play for just a few minutes each day in kindergarten can have lifelong effects on these children's success and can equip these children with the tools they need to develop their executive functions so that one day they too can say, "Everything I need to know, I learned in kindergarten." Thank you. So it's kind of hard to remember if I said everything I was supposed to, so it's all a blur at this point, so I guess we'll see here in an hour or so how it went.
Our next speaker.
My name is Paul Eubanks, and I'm from Kinston, North Carolina. I'm doing a PhD on salt and how the American Indians of the southeastern United States made and used salt.
Not only did this mineral play a vital role in keeping people alive, it also encouraged trade, provoked wars, and even helped lead to the rise and fall of empires.
I've always been interested. Ever since I was a kid, I'd go out in my backyard and dig and try to find cool things, lost treasures, diamonds, or whatever. And now I get to do that for a career, which is pretty exciting.
My professor was like, "Come and support Stephanie." He was like, "I can't. I've been training." My name is Stephanie Parker. I'm a PhD student in the English department. I think I've always been interested in stories that are on the margins. I grew up in North Alabama, and my grandmother's actually Japanese. So I'm a quarter Japanese, but nobody could really tell I'm Japanese American. They're just like, "You're not quite white." And then I dropped out of high school, so that's sort of being on the margins. I had this one English teacher that told my dad that I would never amount to anything. Like, what does that mean? I mean, so if music be the food of love, play on. I took a night class at a community college, and it was World Lit 1 with a professor that Miss McFeeters, she changed my life. But I do think that I've always been interested in the power of narrative and being able to tell stories that don't get told. So I'm analyzing narratives of Japanese American incarceration, specifically visual narratives of Japanese American incarceration. We have government-sanctioned photographs that came out of the camps, and you take these photos and people look happy and they're having a good time and it's like camp is awesome, but then you get these paintings done by artists that were in the camps, and those paintings tell a very different story. I want us to embrace a multivocal view of history, which is hearing these many, many voices at the same time, instead of just hearing the singular voice of, say, an academic talking about something. When we see a painting or we hear a story, we feel things, and those emotions on our own, they belong to the person who created that. And so that's called empathy, and I think that empathy makes us better human beings. One thing that has been born out of the dissertation is a project called Alabama Identity. So I've got that up and running where I'm collecting narratives of marginalized identities from Alabama and in the South as just kind of an open space for people to tell their story and for us to read about all the different people that live in Alabama that might not fit into the kind of monolithic representation of Southerner that we see. That's why I ended up in English. It was really that curiosity about what it means to be human and how we navigate that humanity. So I actually think, as naive as it sounds, and I really do believe that it can change people's lives for the better.
Our next speaker is Stephanie Parker from the Department of English.
I'm feeling pretty shaky, a little nervous, but it's at that point where I just want it to be over, you know?
The title of Stephanie's talk is The Democratization of Narrative. Thank you, Stephanie.
So when we look at a Picasso, it might make us feel a little uncomfortable because we're no longer seeing things from a single perspective, but impossibly from multiple perspectives all at the same time. So histories are like this too. So we read a textbook and we get this single perspective of history. And maybe we even get to say, well, this feels nice and safe because this is the truth and this is what happened. But in reality, we know that there are multiple other perspectives out there. And in particular, we know that there are perspectives from those who have been marginalized or oppressed. So I've analyzed narratives of Japanese American incarceration. I've looked at the government-sanctioned photographs against paintings done by those in the camps. I've looked at monuments and headlines and interviews and museums. And I can tell you that when we look at this historical event from multiple angles, what we get is something more like our Picasso here, at times a contradiction. So it doesn't make one all true and the other all false. It just means we're seeing things from multiple perspectives. And that's part of what primary voice is about. It's about access to the primary voices of those telling stories. So it's about not just primary source, but the literal voices. So in the case of Japanese American incarceration, our technology enables us to have access to the literal voices. So instead of reading a scholar's transcript of an interview, we could actually go to YouTube and look up the video itself and hear the voice and see the expressions of those who were incarcerated. Because what happens when we take something that's in narrative form and we turn it into an academic document, or we take something from a primary voice and we filter it through the voice of a scholar, is we lose much of the pathos or the emotion. And it's the pathos and the emotion that makes narrative so powerful. So you think you read a novel and you feel fear, even though you know you're not in any danger. Or you feel joy and sadness, even though your life hasn't changed at all. So that's the amazing thing about narrative, is that we actually feel the emotions of someone else. And that's called empathy. And empathy can make us better human beings. And so in this way, narrative actually has the power to make us better human beings. And what could be more important than that? So I've argued that we redefine, democratize, and embrace narrative as a form of scholarly inquiry. And if we can accept that the voices of those who are marginalized or oppressed are equally as valid as the voice of a scholar, and if we can accept that narrative is a valid form of scholarly inquiry, and that when we look at historical events from multiple perspectives, we're going to get something that looks a lot like this. If we can accept all these things, I believe that we can alter the way we look at stories of human struggle, and that change will make us better people and build a better world. Thank you. Oh man, so I've practiced it like a million times, and there's this moment where I get to this point and I always flub it, and I got there, and then I just started talking, and I was like, what am I saying? Like, yeah, I did, because I was just like, and that's what primary voice is about, And I was like, oh man, like I am totally off script here. I didn't say that, thank God, I just kept pushing through, and maybe it wasn't noticeable.
This is a semester-long event. We're starting out in September.
In 1968, cultural icon Andy Warhol stated, I'm already rolling my eyes. I had done this so many times.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Giving the students extra training in how to give a presentation. We have some fantastic people on campus who are nationally known for this. People like Alexa Chilcutt, who has just been amazing.
We estimate between 150 and 200 grad students participated at some level, and then the departments nominated a couple of their best.
We have a session that's kind of like speed dating, where people give presentations to one another and critique each other. So that growth process is really exciting to see.
Those students then enter our semifinal competition. And our semifinals this year, we had 45 participants.
We had 3 heats in the semifinals and 3 sets of judges picking 5 finalists out of I think a dozen competitors. And those 15 finalists then, all done independently, competed in the finals.
Our next speaker is Jianing Ji from Information Systems, Statistics, and Management Services. The title of her talk is Integrated Supply Chain for Holiday Shopping. Thank you.
My dissertation is inspired by my own shopping experience before the Christmas. My name is Jianing Zhi, and I am from China. We had the first supermarket, Walmart, around 1999. Supermarket changed the life of my life, based on the shopping. So this is my first motivation. When I choose a major in the college, I choose operations management. I wish I can, first find a job in the United States and work here, because, we have more opportunities here.
So you can get uranium, you can get gold.
Well, my name is Joseph Meany. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Chemistry. I'm from a small town in southwestern New Hampshire called Keene. It's a little bit outside out of Boston. Chemists invent new molecules all the time that change the world. We're reaching the point where we need to make computers smaller, and silicon isn't going to be able to be useful for that. I'm trying to make a molecule, or actually a series of molecules, that will get assembled into nanoscale circuitry so that we can just invent a whole new range of applications that aren't possible with rigid silicon structures. We have glassware and beige boxes that we work with. But it's what those beige boxes and that glassware churns out that makes chemistry so applicable to everybody's daily life. It's not as conducive to cool and sexy pictures like astronomy and biology. Chemistry needs a champion. And so I became the Crimson Alchemist. I run a blog and a Twitter account, and I give general science lectures to the public. You know, I'm sort of trying to make this the Bill Nye of now. It's really important to me. You know, science as a whole is really important. Being able to take matter and change it almost at will, and then actually see that process happening, is just mind-boggling to me. And that's what keeps me going.
Our next speaker is Joseph Meany. Joseph is from the Department of Chemistry.
Hello. How's it going?
How are you doing? I'm
Fantastic.
Robert. This is Haley.
It's good to meet the both of you. I'm Joe.
Yeah, I like the presentation already. So, like, are you nervous? How are you feeling?
No, I'm actually pretty excited. I've got myself sort of into the mindset that right now I've done all that I can do, so really it's just in the hands of the judges.
The title of his talk is Molecular Circuitry, the Little Things That Matter. Thank you, Joseph.
Chemists invent new molecules that change the world. Aspirin, Teflon. From the pharmacy to the frying pan, chemistry impacts your daily life in thousands of ways. Silicon has been useful so far for making computers work, but we're reaching a point where the need for smaller and more flexible circuits takes hold. Wearable electronics, like virus sensors, aren't possible with brittle silicon. I think we can remember that from the iPhone 6 debacle. But that's where I come in. I'm designing and making new molecules to test how electricity flows through as few as 10 atoms and see how we might control that in future materials. By using computers to calculate molecular properties, I can design molecules that will align themselves on a metal surface. Think like building a house out of Legos where the pieces assemble themselves into the final form. That can make computers small and stickable just like Band-Aids. But here comes the fun part. Once I know what molecules it is I want to make based on the molecular properties I need, I can go into my lab and actually make them. I've created a basic backbone out of 2 different rings of carbon that I call hemibiquinone. From there, I'll attach atomic alligator clips. These are bits of the molecule that I need to act as atomic tethers to tie down my molecules to the metal surface. From the design of the molecule to its actual chemical construction and finally through its testing, I have one burning question. Can I move energy one way through a molecule without it moving backwards? Answering this question will allow future scientists to build new devices that aren't even possible today. I do fundamental chemistry research. From my data, new possibilities are opened and new doors are available. Think of virus sensors. Ebola has been in the news a lot recently. Imagine a sensor that you could wear that would alert you or your children and keep you and your family safe. Chemistry is a big part of those little things that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
I did as best as I could. I didn't stumble and I didn't stutter. I think I got the message across.
My name is Amanda Beck, and I am from Auburn, Alabama. I got my undergrad and my master's degrees in accounting from Auburn. And then I went out into industry and worked for a year in accounting, and now I'm back in the PhD program here at Alabama.
Your friend's bad credit score is really no one's business but his and his creditors. But a government's financial condition is everyone's business.
For citizens to be able to monitor the government's finances, they've got to have access to publicly available financial information. But my research suggests that some relevant information may be kept private. I was always interested in transparency in corporations. I started thinking about how transparency in the financials would relate to the government. And so right now I'm looking at what is the status of that environment right now, that information environment right now. But what I hope to eventually be able to do is find ways to improve it.
My name is Elahi and my last name is Saidi. I'm originally from Iran. I'm a master's student in the clothing and textiles. My bachelor is computer engineering, which is kind of different from my master, but because I had a kind of passion about design and fashion, when I was studying in Iran for the computer, I took some private classes out of the university about sewing and design. And then when I moved here, and then I found out that there is a department here, that they have a major in the clothing and textile, then I applied for that. I moved to the United States about 4 years ago in 2010 with my husband. He's a PhD student in physics, and when I was young, I always had problem in finding clothes for myself. So then I decided maybe I can design for myself and kind of combine all of these features together and make a new garment for myself. So I started doing that, and then when my mom realized that I really like to design and making garments, she encouraged me to take some classes, sewing classes and design classes. My thesis is designing garments without waste, because 10 to 20% of the fabric is wasted in cutting process, and I believe that fabric is precious, so we don't have to waste fabric. For the design, we mostly design on a paper and sketch them, and after we sketch the design that we like it, we draw the technical design of that garments in the Illustrator with a software called Illustrator, and then after that we need to fill out the form, which is a spec sheet, and that one is again with a computer to measure, to put all the measures of the garments. And then for my thesis, I'm using a software called Optitex, which is we put all the patterns of the fabric of the garments, and then we can see that how many % of the fabric is wasted. And then we can manipulate it in different ways to use the fabric more efficiently. I've never thought that I could be able to study in this major, because I always, working in this area maybe for hobby. But when I moved here, I found this opportunity to study in this major, but I'm really happy because I think that I'm more successful in design and fashion than computer science.
I'm excited, just a little bit nervous. I hope that I don't lose my word.
Our next speaker is Elahi Saidi. Elahi is from the Department of Clothing, Textiles, and Interior Design.
I had a problem to memorize the last paragraph, and I was memorizing even when I slept. And when I woke up, the first thing that I was saying to myself was that program.
The title of her talk is Precious Cut, Zero Waste Apparel Design. Thank you.
What comes to your mind when you hear the word fashion? Runway fashion, street fashion, couture fashion? Let me tell you a story about my first experience in a professional fashion show. This year, I was accepted as an emerging fashion designer for Birmingham Fashion Week. It was fun and exhilarating, especially being on the stage as a designer. But after the show, when I got back to my daily routine, I realized that there were other aspects of the fashion which are not so glorious. My locker was jam-packed with the leftover scraps of fabrics from my designs because 10 to 20% of the initial fabric bought for a design is wasted in cutting process.
Did you know that 50% of the cost of producing garments comes from fabric? So, why do we need to pay for the fabric wastage when it is not in the garment that we are buying? In addition to economic issues, there are other concerns like environmental and ethical impact of textile industries. Because fabrics arrives at the fashion designer with a significant ecological footprint acquiring during its production. In my master thesis, I am designing zero-waste garments. Or to put it more simply, I am using 100% of the fabric with no waste. So, here's the question. Why fashion industry cannot create garments without fabric wastage? The fabric wastage is the result of the irregular shapes of the pattern pieces and gaps left between them as they laid out on the fabric. You can see in the left picture. In order to use all of the fabric, the pattern pieces needs to interlock like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, as you can see in the right picture. My challenge as a designer in my practice-based master thesis is to create geometrical pattern pieces that can interlock perfectly, yet keeping the desirable appearance and fit of the garment, which I have been successful to create several zero-waste garments so far, and my ultimate goal for my master thesis is to create at least 10 fashionable zero-waste garments. Fabric is the backbone of the fashion, and fashion by nature is the antithesis of sustainability. To reconcile these two opposing forces, fabric needs to be respected and conserved by the fashion industry, because fabric, after all, is the precious cut. Thank you.
So when you're walking down the aisle, are you like, is your heart pumping?
No.
Are you just used to being in front of the crowds?
No, especially with the second language. No, not at all. Maybe it's my second time. The first time was the semifinal, and this is my second time.
Our next speaker is from the Department of Psychology.
My name is Coral Marshall. I'm from Huntington Beach, California. I study mass communication with an emphasis in sport media, and I look specifically at sport deviance, how off-field deviant actions impact on-field perceptions.
Well, the implications of this are far-reaching, right? It means people who are performing well on the field are more likely to be liked after they're accused of a deviant action.
I think it speaks largely to our societal values and the values of celebrity culture.
Thank you.
My ideal situation, I would work in academia and also do consulting work in professional sport.
I feel intellectual, so am I looking like it? My name is Jessica Pincham King. I am from Dallas, Texas. My field of study is social work. For me, there was no doubt about working in the educational system or working with children, either whether it was directly or indirectly. And the more I learned more about myself and means to combat injustices, it kind of all fit together. I hypothesized that the more African American parents were involved in their child's special education processes, the less satisfied they would be. As opposed to Caucasian parents, the more involved they were, the more satisfied they would be. There's this notion called disproportionality, and that's where minority children have a greater likelihood of being diagnosed with intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, sometimes, unnecessarily, and that's discriminatory when you think about it. Why are these children? The studies have shown that even in school systems that are predominantly white and that have very, very low percentages of African American children, the percentage of African American children in special education was very high in comparison to their white peers. And so because of that, I use that as a foundation of saying hey, because these parents are involved because they're not satisfied. That's why they have more involvement, because they don't agree with the decisions and the plans that are being made. And I think that's kind of what sets my research apart, or just kind of brings another angle to the discussion. A lot of people choose to ignore the role that race plays in things like that. And it's not to say that you're prejudiced or you're elitist or you're ethnocentric. You just have to see it for what it is in many cases.
Our next speaker is Jessica Pincham King. Jessica is from the School of Social Work. The title of her talk is Parent Involvement in Special Education. Thank you, Jennifer. Jessica.
Special education is a specially designed instruction provided at no cost to parents in order to meet the unique needs of children with disabilities. As recent as 15 years ago, children with disabilities were educated in separate wings of our nation's schools, isolated and segregated from their peers. Although that is no longer allowed, what's even more disheartening is federal data reveals that members of particular minority groups experience a greater likelihood of being diagnosed with certain disabilities, often the result of not understanding cultural differences and nuances. Countless research and education policies have illustrated the importance of parent involvement in education for all children, yet for children in special education, parent involvement can be a significant puzzle piece for ensuring quality services and accommodations. Parent involvement consists of school-based activities, activities engaged in the home, as well as community events parents choose to expose their children to. In particular, special education, though, much of the involvement activities are conducted on-site at the school and require an extensive amount of communication between school staff and administrators. There's this underlying perception that when parents aren't involved, they simply don't care, when in fact they do. Maybe they work multiple jobs with extensive hours, or feel alienated by the school, or are the primary caregiver of an aging parent. Regardless of the circumstances, you have to wonder whether these parents see their glasses as being half empty or half full. Now, the research does suggest means to which schools can facilitate involvement for these parents, yet the research hasn't necessarily tapped into whether or not specific parent involvement activities are associated with the child receiving comprehensive special education services to meet all of their unique needs, not just simple instructions to help their grades improve. My research points to opportunities that schools and families have to meet in the middle to ensure better educational options for students. My dissertation is addressing this through two primary research questions. One, is school-based parent involvement associated with children receiving comprehensive special education services? And two, is school-based parent involvement associated with parents being satisfied with the services their child receives? My ultimate goal is to ensure that all children receive a quality education through systematically putting the pieces of the educational puzzle together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
It is what it is.
Well, at least
So,
it's
right.
What are you gonna do to celebrate now that it's over?
Have a glass of wine when I get home.
Oh,
I am.
come on.
This is for television, so have a glass of wine when I get home.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is for you all to actually complete your People's Choice votes. Please enjoy our refreshments, and we'll see you back in here at 7:25. Thank you.
It's like 3 points different for 4 people. It's like super close, so the judges want to see their ballots again. But
Can you give us the scores?
I definitely
Yeah,
can.
I need to think about it.
Okay.
I'm good with 1 and 2. It's 3 and 4 that.
All right. So let's do a vote. That's 4.
Yeah.
All right. That's where we're going.
So in 4th place, Jennifer Sherwood from Chemical and Biological Engineering. Jennifer. In 3rd place, Joseph Meany from Chemistry. In 2nd place, Stephanie Parker from English. And somebody has to win first place. Brandon Chikotsky from Communication and Information Sciences. Just to remind you, the first place winner not only wins the $1,500 in cash and scholarship awards, but also will represent the University of Alabama in the regional competition in March 2015 in New Orleans. So you got to practice up. And our People's Choice Award winner this year is Jessica Pincham King from Social Work. And these are your award winners, ladies and gentlemen. But again, everybody else who was a finalist here, let's give them a round of applause. They're all winners.
Scanning the ground, I was going through it point. It was going good. There's my advisor right here. I was like, oh, wait, what did I have to say? Oh, I think I got homework due tomorrow, that kind of thing. It was terrible.
So glad that's over. It's been like a weight on my shoulders for like 2 weeks since we found out we made the finals, so I'm just so glad it's over.
Oh my God, I'm so glad that it's over, you know? You know what's weird is today's my birthday. So, actually some folks from my department are going out for margaritas after.
My overzealousness is my real challenge. I have to make sure I check that. No, I think I was a flaming extrovert.
What song is that? I knew you were good for it. Eye of the Tiger.
And I'm hoping more students, we'll have even more students at the 3rd annual 3-minute thesis competition next year.